Hi there, it's Nicole McWork with this month's scrapbook stamping lesson brought to you by 2peasinthebucket.com. October's class features creating a stamped scene on a scrapbook layout. And you can see the little cityscape up there with the clouds and the sunshine all stamped. Here is the sketch that goes along with this month's class. You can use it if you want to, or you don't have to. To create the stamped scene at the top of the page, I'm using this Cityscape stamp from Hero Arts, and it's a woodblock stamp, and I'm just inking it up with some black Memories ink. And I'm using several of these very neutral colored papers from Studio Calico. Now I'm purposely using papers that don't have a lot of design in them. I wanted a little bit of design, but I wanted it to be very subtle. And I'm doing this because when I go to put my little scene together for my page, I want the stamping to show up. I don't want it to get lost in the pattern of the paper. So I'm just stamping this on about 4 designs. I'm using the back side of one of these papers as well. So I'll keep inking that up. Press really good. And I'm not using a Stamp-A-Majig or anything like that while I'm stamping here on the paper because I don't really necessarily need it lined up. I can just stamp it as is because I'm going to be cutting out pieces of this and putting it together. So once I have all of the stamped images stamped on my papers, I can go ahead and start cutting them out. And I'm just going to quickly cut around each of the scenes so that I can cut out all the pieces and put it together. I'm going to kind of cut out a lot of that part of it because it is simply just cutting, and it's however you want to do it. And you wouldn't have to do this either. You could just stamp the design straight on your scrapbook page, color it in with markers, Copic markers, colored pencils, or leave it as is. It's completely up to you. But I'm just using pattern paper and kind of piecing my little cityscape scene together for my page. So here are all the pieces cut out. Now I have grabbed my Stamp-A-Majig, and the reason is because with woodblock stamps, it's very hard to figure out the perfect placement and get your image stamped straight when you can't see through that wood block to make sure that you're getting it stamped exactly where it needs to go. So I've got most of my layout put together here, or at least kind of laying out. And so I've stamped it on that clear sheet that comes with the Stamp-A-Majig, and I'm using the little T-square that comes with it to line that up. And it didn't matter that I didn't get a really good stamped impression on that clear sheet. I just needed it enough to know where I was going to stamp my Cityscape. So leaving that T-square in place, I'm going to replace my woodblock stamp and stamp that right there on my paper. Again, it wasn't the best impression, but I'm completely covering that up with the cutout pieces that I stamped, excuse me, and cut out earlier. So all I really needed was a guide to where to place all my pieces. And now I'm simply going to go through, add some adhesive, and replace the little cutouts right over that stamped image on my page. To make it more interesting, I'm going to put some foam adhesive behind some of the pieces so that it kind of pops it up and gives it more dimension. So I'm going to speed through this because it is, I wouldn't say it's terribly time consuming, but I don't want to have you sit there and wait through a very boring process of me putting adhesive on the back of all these little pieces. So I'm simply just I'm using regular tape runner adhesive on some of the pieces and then some foam dots on the rest. And you can see I kind of alternated with the 4 patterns that I cut out of the paper to make it more interesting as well. I did cut the clock face out of one of the other papers, and layered that over just to make it look a little bit cuter or make it stand out a little bit. And there is the little cityscape. Next, I am going to take a few colors of ink. I'm using a couple of kind of taupe color or tan colors of ink, and then a red color. And I'm going to take this little cloud stamp from the Studio Calico and Hero Arts collaboration stamp set, Hooray! And I'm just going to stamp this little polka dot stamp 3 times. And it coordinates with the smaller size cloud punch from Fiskars. I think it's called the large cloud punch, and then the other size is the extra large cloud punch. And then I'm going to take my cloud punch and punch out these little clouds. What I'm doing is creating a few more pieces to go with the cityscape scene that I'm creating on my layout. And then I'm going to layer these pieces and add them to my scene for more interest. Again, I'm using some foam adhesive because I like the dimension that that adds to my cityscape. I'll layer that there. So now that I have my city and all the buildings and everything like that, and I have some cute little clouds, I really wanted to add a sun. And I was looking at my stamps, and one of the other new Studio Calico and Hero Arts stamp sets has this really cute circle stamp that's kind of a grid. It matches some of the paper from Studio Calico as well. And so I used one of my tan inks and stamped it on a scrap of yellow cardstock. But instead of leaving it in the circle shape, like you see here, I'm going to go ahead and punch that out with a 1.5 inch circle punch. And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm simply going to cut notches every 2 sections in this little circle grid. And that's going to give me a little sunshine. So I'm going to go ahead and finish doing that real quick, and I'll speed through that. Just cutting my little notches and cutting all of that out. And it leaves me with this really cute little stamped sun that has a little bit of design to it. So just a fun way to kind of customize your stamps and maybe use them or think about them a little bit out of the box. Next, I'm going to take this little heart from another one of the Studio Calico and Hero Arts stamp sets, and I'm going to stamp it with some red ink. Then it has a coordinating little outline stamp, and I'm going to stamp that with some brown ink. Now this isn't necessarily part of the scene or the stamped scene I created for my page, but it's just another way to include some stamping on your layout. So I'm just creating some little accents. Now this little stamp here doesn't coordinate necessarily, or wasn't made to coordinate, I should say, with these heart stamps, but I found that it was the perfect size and it left that cute little white border, and so I used it instead of having to cut my hearts out by hand. Then I'm simply going to grab those hearts and I'm going to adhere them throughout my page. And pardon my head in the way, I'm sorry about that. I noticed my cloud didn't get laid down exactly right, so I was just fixing that. So there's one of my little stamped hearts, and I'm simply going to use some mini glue dots to adhere those throughout my page. One at the end of my title, kind of finishes that nice title and stamped scene at the top of the page. And then I'm going to add one to my October afternoon sticker, and then I'll add one near the bottom near my journaling. One other thing I would like to note about the page is the photo collage at the bottom is a photo collage from 2 Peas in a Bucket by Erica Hernandez, and it's a really easy clipping mask. What I did was just dropped my photos into the clipping mask, and then I cut around it just with my scissors and adhered it to my page. So just a fun way to kind of combine digital elements with your paper ones. For more information, please visit 2peasinabucket.com on October 1st, 2011. Thanks for watching.